Good morning, everyone.
Okay, we are all set. Feel free to get started.
Okay. Good morning. I want you to take a few seconds and look at the image that's on the screen and ask yourself the question or answer to yourself, are they on the right track? And if you think about that and we look at it from an athletic standpoint, the question probably would be no not for both student athletes. One appears to not be in the right attire as it relates to the footwear. So what we're going to talk about today is, are they on the right track academically? Getting ready for advanced academic destinations, also known as GRAD, is a nonprofit based in Baton Rouge, but we provide services throughout the state of Louisiana. I've even worked with some student athletes outside of Louisiana. I've been an educator for over 23 years, and about 5 years ago, started to run GRAD full time. Our mission is to proactively collaborate with students, student athletes, and stakeholders to provide integrated academic support and enhance educational achievement. So basically, to provide a holistic approach to their academic success, and we do it in the order in which their names are listed. So the students and student athletes are first for a reason, because we want them to take ownership of their own educational path. I want to talk to you about my most memorable student. This particular student athlete, as you notice, went to 3 different schools in elementary. What the parents noticed was that some of the trends were pretty much the same. So he started having some behavior issues that led into academic issues. So by his 3rd school, they medicated him. And immediately he had a major side effect to the medication. So he developed these vocal and motor tics that shifted the parents' thought processes behind how can he adapt with school, because it was more of their concerns were him being able to adapt socially versus academically, because these tics were very visible, nonstop, involuntary muscle movements. So by middle school, the tics started to subside, and he decided that he wanted to play for his school. At that, up to the 7th grade, he was academically ineligible. And so by 8th grade, there was a shift. About 8th grade, there was a shift in his motivation, and also just a shift in the resources and tracking and academic support needed to help him be successful. That by 9th grade, he walked into his home. He walked in the house one day with his progress report, and he says, "Look, Mom, I'm eligible." So he ended up graduating from high school on time, and this particular student athlete's name is Claude Coleman III. So not only am I an educator, but I'm also the mother of a student athlete. As I mentioned, Claude graduated from high school on time. He decided to go to California for a semester and play at El Camino College. He is now a senior at Grambling State University, and he's a member of the football team. But more importantly, he's an honor student, and he is on track to graduate this fall. So what is the situation? Many student athletes are prepared athletically, but not academically. They often use sports as an avenue to college or to just permanently escape their impoverished environments. We know that in 2015, NCAA enforced higher standards for collegiate athletic eligibility. That's when the GPAs increased. But at that time, we know ACT was still a part of the eligibility requirements. And so since then, the standardized test scores are waived. Many high school athletes are just unaware of these eligibility standards until the end of their high school tenure. So although those standardized test scores have been waived, I've received more calls this spring about student athletes being concerned that they're going to be academically eligible than I did when ACT scores were actually required. So it causes many of their dreams to be crushed just due to improper planning or a gap in understanding those requirements. So what's the solution? So the solution we use at GRAD, I'm going to walk you through those steps, but what I'm hoping, even if you work with college student athletes, some of these strategies can actually help them just by understanding holistically, what does it take for me to be able to reach the destination that I need to stay on the field or stay in the gym or stay on the track or baseball field or whatever sport that they are actually involved in. So preventative educational planning is very important. Also offering an individualized, customized learning plan. So there are many cases you pull a full team in and you just talk to them generally about education and the importance of academics, but it doesn't necessarily register with the individual student athlete because they don't even know how to get through their own struggles academically. They hear you, but they don't understand. They don't know what it takes for them to be able to be academically eligible. We provide academic monitoring and tracking, and then we just take a holistic approach to college and career readiness using specific tracking tools. So what's the outcome? It eliminates the guesswork. So strategic course selection is very important because it allows those course selections to be double verified. So it doesn't just put all of the work on a guidance counselor to ensure that they are meeting requirements. It's being double checked by the student athlete, by their parents, and by any other stakeholders that are involved in this academic process. And also monitoring the transcript. So we take one piece of paper and we're dissecting it to make sure that they clearly understand what it takes for them to be academically eligible so that they can not only strengthen their craft on the field, but then they're also able to perform best academically. So the strategic results is a collaboration with parents, coaches, schools to make sure there's proactive course selection and to breed a student athlete to be academically ready. That's who we call a STAR. Grad STAR is a student athlete academically ready. So I'm also the mother of 2 student athletes. So Cameron, after he heard and saw all the processes that his brother had to go through, it was a different ballgame with him. So he's graduating with honors and he will be moving on to Missouri Valley to play football in the fall. So here's the academic tracks that GRAD takes. So we use 5 preventative planning tracks: tracking high school graduation, tracking the high school athletic scholastic requirements, tracking the college university admission requirements, tracking the college university athletic academic requirements, and then any other academic requirements. So just imagine a high school student athlete who is just trying to make it across the stage also have these other different areas that they have to meet academic requirements in. So step 1, what I've done since I work with student athletes in Louisiana, I've pulled in some graduation requirements from our public schools as well as one of the private schools here that I work with. So our student athletes can graduate from high school in a public school from one of two tracks, either Topps University or Jumpstart. Sometimes a student athlete is shifted to a Jumpstart requirement, and they don't really understand what that means for them. If they graduate with that diploma, they cannot play at a Division I nor Division II school. And I've highlighted one of those areas where they don't meet the requirement. They don't have to take foreign languages. Additionally, there's 4 maths that they have to take and 4 Englishes, but they're not all college level English and math courses. At our private school, now this is a conversation with the student athletes and their parents, understanding that their requirement says 3 social studies, but religion actually has an additional course that can count as a social studies credit. So I pulled in a sample transcript, and what this particular student athlete is on the Topps University diploma track. It requires 24 credits. So sometimes they look at the bottom line, and a student athlete may say, well, I've earned 23 credits, so I'm set for graduation. But it's not that simple. There are actually courses in specific categories that they have to take to make sure they meet the eligibility. So we also point that information out to those student athletes and their families. The other bottom line, and we hear this often, is that when coaches, even ourselves, I do it intentionally. I'll just ask them when I first start with a student athlete, how are your grades? What's your grade point average? They're going to give you the bottom line, and they're going to say, I have a 2.6 GPA. But we're going to see how that is not necessarily the case whenever they have all these different academic tracks that have to be calculated based on specific requirements. So to stay on the right track in lane 1, that's the high school graduation path. In order for a student athlete, family, or even any stakeholders who are working with those student athletes to ensure they're on that right track, those resources can be found at the State Department of Education's website, the local school system's website, or even from the school or the guidance counselor. Track 2, High School Athletic Association scholastic requirements. So I'm pulling the requirements for Louisiana. So Louisiana requires our student athletes to have earned at least 6 units from a previous school year and earn a C average as determined by their LEA, which is their local educational agency. So most C averages is a 1.5. Now, many of the schools will increase that requirement just for academic rigor, but it's typically a 1.5. And then a freshman just have to be promoted from 8th grade to play first semester. So that's all of our fall sports. Second semester, GPA is waived. There's no GPA requirement. They just have to earn a certain number of credits to play in the second semester of those spring sports. So if we go back to that student athlete's transcript, again, I'm going to keep pulling that cumulative GPA in because that's what they know. That's what they say that they've earned. That's what they're assuming that they need to be able to play on the next level. So this particular athlete, in order for him to be eligible to play in the fall, he passed 7.5 of 8 credits. He has a GPA of a 2.06 for fall sports, but his core GPA from that previous year is a 1.5. That's a huge difference. To play spring, he passed 3.5 credits, so he's eligible to play in the spring. So lane 2. So to stay on the right track to play at my high school, I can get that information either from my athletic director or the head coach, or if you just do a quick Google search. So I've checked a couple of states. So regardless of the state that you're in, you can just search high school or secondary school athletic association, and those athletic requirements are there. Lane 3, NCAA Division I requirements. So when I work with student athletes, I start at the top. If a student athlete is eligible to play at a D1 college, then they're academically eligible to play anywhere else. NAIA, JUCO. So we start here. Now, remember we talked about high school graduation requirements being 24. Now we're shifting to 16. So NCAA D1 requires 16 core requirements and the specific breakdowns that are listed here. There's a core GPA average requirement, which is changed to 2.3, and then we know ACT is waived. So if we take a look at that a little more closer, so those 16 core courses, now those student athletes, they don't understand that 10 of those classes will be locked in at the end of your junior year of high school, including the summer. And 7 of those 10 courses have to be in English, math, or science. So what I tell parents and student athletes, when you're looking at a transcript, it's basically English, math, science, social studies, and foreign language. As I've looked at the various schools that I've worked with, those are the courses that are listed that meet qualifications. So when you're looking at those courses, you have to make sure that the core classes, as well as your foreign languages, are increased. Basically, what I tell them, try to maintain A's and B's, because if a C is worth 2 quality points, then that's a 2.0. So just imagine across the board, if you had all C's, that's a 2.0, therefore you're ineligible. So when you kind of break the language down to them like that, it motivates them, it helps them really understand, okay, I have to try to maintain A and B's in those core classes, not that cumulative GPA, but actually in those core classes. So circling back, looking at that sample transcript, pulling that cumulative GPA in again of that 2.64, this particular student athlete, his 10-7 course GPA is a 2.55. So now we see how it's decreased from the cumulative. I'm pulling in the final GPA of the 2.469. So now we see how the language or how the cum GPA can actually not be as high as a student athlete think it is. So even the ones who talk to recruiters and they say, well, I have a 2.3, they have a 2.3 cum, but when you take the core courses out, 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be below, because that 2.3 is including those A's that they've made in PE all 4 years. So lane 3, to make sure that they're on the right track for college university eligibility, we pull core information from NCAA, but more importantly, we pay close attention to the high school grade portal. And the reason why I want to emphasize that is because there's a lot of changes in the school system. So if a guidance counselor was responsible for maintaining that high school grade portal and they change, and that wasn't on the checklist to tell the new guidance counselor about, there have been some times where we've had to do cleanup and get them to contact NCAA so that student athlete could actually earn credit for a course that they had taken in high school, but it wasn't on their course list for NCAA. So we constantly monitor that and then teach the parents and everybody that we work with where to go to check to make sure the courses that they're selecting are actually on the course NCAA grade portal. Our next lane is college university requirements. So we do a general evaluation in the state of Louisiana based on the colleges that you see listed. So all of these colleges are governed by our Louisiana Board of Regents, and they have specific requirements. So now if we take a look, we are now looking at different core credits. So these student athletes have 24 they have to earn, at least 24 to graduate from high school. There's the 16 for NCAA. And now to be admitted to the university, there are 19 core units that they have to take, especially if they're going to a school in Louisiana. The overall GPA is a 2.4, so 2.0. So now we can tell them this is where your cumulative GPA matters. This is part of where it matters. So they will look at their overall GPA, but additionally, they're also looking at the core GPA for college admission, as well as ACT composite. So now this goes back to talking about the waiver of ACT. So a lot of student athletes, even coaches, even families were so excited about the ACT being waived, but not realizing that your student athlete still has to get in college. They still have to meet those college requirements. So I've gotten a lot of calls, because I do also offer ACT prep, that they're upset. They were not able to sign on signing day because they did not meet the college admission requirements. And then in addition to that, we talked to them about the sub score. So you have a composite you need to actually earn, but then there are specific sub scores you need to earn to make sure that you are not taking a developmental course. And I actually recently saw an article where our state has adopted changes for developmental courses. So we'll look into that a little more and just make sure that they are prepared based on those new changes. Okay, so let's go back to that student athlete, the sample transcript. So that particular student athlete was interested in going to a regional university. The overall GPA in those 19 core courses was a 2.34. I pulled in that NCAA final GPA again, because if you remember, that was a 2.6 cum. He now has a 2.469 NCAA GPA, and his overall GPA for the college is a 2.34. So apparently there were some lower grades in those additional 3 units that were pulled in that caused his GPA to decrease. And then he had a SAT of an 890 and an ACT of a 16. That was below what he needed to get in school. But then there was another avenue where he took the AccuPlacer test at the college, and he was able to test into those college level courses. So lane 4, what do we do to track college university admission requirements? Visit the State Board of Regents for whatever state you're in to see if they have some standard requirements or general requirements for those schools that are governed by those Board of Regents, or then they can specifically go to the college or university website. The reason why we choose just that general requirement is because we start with student athletes as early as possible. So as a freshman, they really don't know where they want to go to college. So we just kind of look at an overall, a general admission requirement just to make sure we can keep them on track. I want to take this time and just kind of show you a couple of sample trackers that are used. This one in particular that we chose to use it has helped parents and even conversations with students. This is in so many different ways. So now we're not just logging into a student's grade portal and looking to see what the grade is today and looking again tomorrow. We track them 3 days a week. So therefore we can kind of see a trend. And this trend has told us so much, not just about the student, but even about the teacher. So there may be a particular teacher that we know that he or she is not going to put grades in very often. So we got to make sure that you're completing all your assignments, because you don't want to be surprised at the end of the semester. Additionally, we are flagging or highlighting those core courses, as well as that cumulative GPA, And the different colors of the blue and red indicates weighted and unweighted GPA. So these are conversations that we start having with these student athletes as early as 9th grade, so they really understand what all of this means and how it impacts their future. So at the end, so this is what we call monitoring. So we do this in between so that there are no surprises when they actually get their report card at the end of the semester. So after they receive a report card, then they actually have these trackers aligned to everything I've presented to you in the PowerPoint. So now this student athlete in particular can actually have a sheet of paper that shows exactly what I need to take to graduate. So in the spring, whenever they get the opportunity to select their courses for the next year, it's meaningful. It's not just based on feeling or I think I want to take this class. It actually aligns to the track that you need to be on to graduate from high school. This one also aligns to their eligibility status for NCAA. So we're highlighting in red what those 10-7 courses are. So this is potentially what your GPA would be if it's locked in at the end of your junior year. And we also do it for Division II. It's done for Louisiana Board of Regents. And the 5th track that I mentioned to you early on in the presentation, but I didn't talk a lot about, is TOPS. So in the state of Louisiana, we have a tuition opportunity for, so students who have earned a certain GPA or ACT score can actually have their tuition waived, depending on the school that they attend. So we actually do an alignment there. But the great thing about it, it aligns with their high school graduation diploma. So it's the same 19 courses, they just require to have a certain grade point average. And then this is the sheet for Louisiana high school eligibility. There's one other one that I want to show you. So remember, my most memorable student being my son, this is how we were able to ensure that he graduated from college on time and he stayed eligible. We are now continuing the tracker on to college. So after they graduate, we work with them to strategically schedule their courses. So for example, I know during football season, it's a little bit more, he has limited time on being able to perform well academically. So we're not taking those rigorous courses in the fall. We wait to take those in the spring or summer. So I've just been kind of tracking his information in the spreadsheet. And I'm also a graduate of Grambling and I love them dearly, but we are still, our degree plans are still on paper there. So it's, I had to adopt this for him just so I can make sure that we didn't fall between the crack on particular requirements. So anyway, I'm smiling and I'm kind of laughing because his dean was my professor in college. So he told me, he said, I know you're going to keep track on what he needs. So just make note and then we'll follow up at the end of each semester. But that's pretty much it. That's what we've been doing. I'm just very proud to know that the student athletes that I've worked with are fully taking ownership. I've had several of them who just decided I'm just going to go to college and not necessarily pursue my athletic opportunities, but I'm going to go and earn my degree. So I have one particular that we just talked last night. He's actually going to attend LSU. And he said if the opportunity presents itself, he may try out for the team. But to know that he's taken ownership to truly be a star, that's what we work very hard to do with grad. Do we have any questions?
If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can just simply raise your hand. Also, before you go, we'll have you do an evaluation. I'll put the QR code up. Actually, I can go ahead and share my screen now. Excuse me, and I will put the QR code up as we are fielding questions.
And I forgot, it's actually on the last slide of my,
Oh, okay. You want me? I can exit out and you can share your slide if you would like.
it's okay, it's fine since you have it up.
I hit the wrong button. I apologize. You would think that we know how to do this after 2 years of being virtual for so long. So my apologies. There it is, back up there. I can't tell if anybody has any questions from what I can see. I'm scrolling through.
Okay. Well, I will share a couple of other things. So I've had an opportunity to work with some of the college athletes as addition outside of my son. So actually a couple of mothers called me because they had gotten some calls about their sons potentially not being eligible. And so one of the things that we talked about was the fact that they just didn't know. They didn't know. They really make the assumption that they're going to be okay. And being able to maintain a 2.5 GPA, if you think about it, they came from high school being okay. They were okay having to, with a 1.5 GPA, and now it's shifting to a 2.5 GPA and having to earn so many credits. It was just a different shift and change for them. So they just didn't know. And so there's one particular student athlete that I worked with at college. He had to take a winter session class and actually earned an A. So just conversations and a mindset shift, it can definitely make a difference. This is my second time presenting in the summit. I actually worked at LSU for 7 years where I oversaw high school correspondence courses. And during that time, we were kind of like a last resort opportunity for high school student athletes. So, and they didn't have the requirements where there were courses that were locked in. So when recruiters would go out to talk to the student athletes and realize they were going to be short credits for eligibility, they would take these courses with us to meet eligibility. And so Kenneth and I had an opportunity to meet, and I have, he's kind of mentored me through the years, and I was grateful for that. But I can remember someone asking in the last summit, how do you motivate them? How do you motivate these college athletes who in their mind think that I'm the big dog on campus, I play sports, but you're not doing what you need to do academically? And I think one of the answers to remember is to call their mothers or whomever that person in their life, like they could make a difference. These two student athletes I talked to their mothers, and for their mothers to be knowledgeable of what it requires for them to maintain their eligibility, it speaks volumes because they didn't want to disappoint their moms. They didn't want to then they're not going to disrespect them. But those tutors, they look at you as their peers because a lot of the tutors are actually college students. So they look at you as their peers, but having that layer, having that person of support that the tutors that you guys work with can lean on outside of the coaches. The coaches are there, yes, but it's different. I can tell you, being a student athlete mom, I called my son the other day, and I could tell in his tone something was wrong, and I know how to talk to him to cut it off. And he called me back later and he said, I'm sorry. I was having to do punish work because I was sent for an MRI. The coach thought I was late for practice. He said, but I really wasn't. But his tone changed. So moms definitely have some weight.
I was going to ask this question because you have 3 different tracks. You mentioned when you're doing the tracker, how early do you start this in high school? Freshman year, and you get the parents involved from day one? Or is it, well, maybe they had a great freshman year and then they start thinking they're going to go to college to play a sport? So how soon do you start this and this conversation with the parents?
Actually, we started middle school. So I actually work with middle schoolers now. And so when we have the conversation with them, we just talk about core classes. So although they get a different report card and they're not high school credit, but we start tracking just their core classes. So the English, math, science, social studies. So we start as early as middle school. So to me, it's never too early because they all love to play sports. And so in order for you to do that, you have to maintain your grade point average. So as soon as possible. But we have some middle schoolers that we work with.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any other questions, thoughts, or feedback? If not, I'll leave this up for a couple more minutes so you can fill out the scan the QR code to fill out the session evaluation, and we'll just leave it here for a couple minutes and we'll end the presentation. Thank you, Ms. DeShonda Coleman, for your time and for presenting. That was a lot of information, very helpful, very detailed. I'm gonna have to call you to steal that spreadsheet. I love an Excel spreadsheet, so.
Well, I will. I've done this actually at a high school with some coaches. And so the goal is to see how we can, and I'm going to say we, because I do support schools, to see how we can shift what we're doing at our level. When I mentioned to you that I had quite a few high school student athletes, I didn't necessarily work with them, but they heard about me. So their parents start calling and they asked me, hey, what do we need to do this last semester to make sure our student athlete has the grade? So I'm able to evaluate and tell them that. Well, I had a couple of conversations with some recruiters and they were like, we've had to do so much cleanup this year. Like it's because of GPA. One student, I think he didn't submit the right report card. So that was, they kept telling him the GPA was wrong, and the student athlete didn't even realize he had submitted the wrong report card. So we've kind of been that buffer to kind of take a step back. Let's look at the whole picture and let's create a path that can work for everybody. So by doing that, I'm hoping that we can get our coaches on board on the high school level to actually be a part of this and understanding what it takes, and to make their study sessions or study hall more meaningful and more intentional when they are actually meeting with these student athletes, because they're with them pretty much more than they are with their families, especially during their season. And additionally, what we've been telling coaches is don't make them a priority just during your season. We've seen the trends of their GPAs drop when it's not their season. Now, you would think that doesn't make sense because they're practicing more and they're gone with gains, but it's because there's somebody in their ear at least saying, get your grades up. And then when their season is over, they don't talk to them about it. And then that's when we started to see a decline in grades at that particular time. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I did take the QR code down, but I think we are all set and we're almost at time. We still have some more time, about 10 minutes. I don't know if you wanted to share anything else, or if you.
For those who are still in the session, do you mind sharing with me what school you are and what role you play with student athletes? Or if you're a parent or. No, okay.
I'll make sure I got the right box checked. They should be able to unmute themselves. Yep, they should be able to unmute themselves.
Okay. I think I see Kayla Owens. She's
Kayla Owens. She is an academic coordinator at NC State.
okay.
Hi, I'm Cecily Taylor. I'm the Associate Director of Academics here at Baylor University. I work with football and soccer.
Okay, nice. Nice.
Cecily, your student in your office was ready. They was camera ready. They were like, oh, hi.
It's actually my coworker.
Coworker, she got to introduce herself too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Peterson, and I'm the Associate Director of Character Formation here at Baylor.
Nice.
I just wanted to tag team on. I was like, let me listen into.
Thank you for joining in. We appreciate it.
First.
What is there anything that you guys like? Is there, are there any recommendations that you would like to provide that we can, make some changes with the high school student athletes? What are the trends that you're seeing that would make a difference if the high school would provide some additional support?
My students just don't know anything.
Yeah.
They come here in all transparency, they're like, well, I'm just coming here to play football. So they don't know or care about GPA. They don't know and care until it affects them in their eligibility.
Yeah.
So when they find out that they can't play, they come here in the fall and they can't play. Now things are like, okay, I actually got to do school so I can compete. So that's when it really hits them. But most of the time with most of my at-risk students, it doesn't affect them until school affects them. So if they're ineligible or they have to achieve a large amount of hours just so they can compete next fall, that's when it really hits them like, oh, I guess I do need to be a student athlete.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think the transition I see just from a development standpoint is that them just knowing themselves or knowing what they want to do in life. And I know it's pretty early, especially as first years, for you to start thinking about those things. But I know when you're told you're really talented in a certain area of your life, you kind of neglect the other parts of it. And so when we do programming like our leadership development or our leadership retreat, we get a lot of students who are eager about learning more about themselves. But when you ask those hard questions about core values or what leadership style have you seen effective, that's when they're like, I don't like this. This feels very uncomfortable. How about you tell me what I should do or what you see in me? And so I think what could be implemented from a high school level is just more of those development classes, or at least for the counselors to be able to have those early on conversations with the student. But I know it's also hard because you're dealing with not only those student athletes, but the rest of the student athlete population. So I know counselors kind of have it difficult trying to navigate all those students, but I just think having conversations early with our students about who they actually are before they get to college can help alleviate a lot of issues they may have in the beginning.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And so one of the schools I support, there's over 1,000 students and they have 2 guidance counselors.
Ooh.
What?
Yeah. So, it's hard, they work very hard to get them across the stage. But then as you saw all those different pieces, it's up to the student athlete and their families to make sure they meet eligibility there. Now, a couple other things we do. So I do a self-knowledge assessment with the student athletes, teaching them like their learning style. So part of our meetings, we actually focus on like the studying. So that's where my tracker, like the trends show there, like, are you studying? How are you studying? What are you doing? Have you done? And I can tell they stopped doing that or they're busy during their season. And so grades start dropping. Well, that's because you are trying to memorize and you stop the learning process. So, we have a lot of deeper conversations than what you just see on the surface. And the young man I was referring to that's going to LSU, he wants to open his own gym. So I've already talked to him about filing his LLC as soon as he can. You see, so we start those conversations early. I filed an LLC for my boys already, just in case you want to start your own business. We have a business established, so you're absolutely right. They don't know. They're the star on campus. And another place where we fall short as high schools, we allow them to make up work. We allow them to turn things in late. And so that's a work ethic academically that they go into college with that doesn't work when you get there.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship right now in college with that. That I had a whole parent-teacher conference with a 20-year-old So that was very fun. And the professor still is allowing him to submit late work. I said, can you just give him a 0 so he can learn?
Yeah.
'Cause now he's just gonna keep doing it and do it for all of his classes.
Yeah. Or come in now at the end of the semester and try to make up all that stuff. And so,
And the professor's texting me like, oh, well, he still didn't submit this. I really want to text back. Well, stop allowing him to submit it late. Just give him a 0 and we can all move on.
yeah,
It's the kid's fault.
yeah,
But no, they always want to support and help. So, but they're actually hindering when they think they're helping.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And just even thinking about that, so for me, I'm the overseer, the advisor for our SAC group. And I always remind them that this is their business. So like, even as you are thinking about transitioning into your career, like this is you getting the firsthand like glimpse of your leadership style and how you motivate others. I'm like, I'm your advisor, but I'm not the one that's telling people to come. I'm not the one that's setting the agenda. I'm not the one that's doing the events or anything like that. So I give them guidelines. And I even let them know, like, when you go out into the real world, if you fall short on the project, your boss is not going to be us and tell you, it's fine, we'll figure it out, like, we'll adjust. You can most likely get fired. They might be like, thank you so much, that was great.
Yeah.
Later. Or I even tell them, like, what you did in college is beautiful, it's amazing. But just like me, when you sit across the table from your boss and you talk about all the accolades you did in college, they're like, that's great. So how do you translate that into the workforce? Like, how do you become that national champion here in this business firm? So I was like, you always have to translate that and not just be wrapped up in your identity. Y'all have to look at those skills that you learn academically and the ones that we teach you professionally so that you can advance.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I have told them that whatever you're creating now, you're going to carry with you for the rest of your life. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Well, we're going to keep working hard and doing what we can. I know I'm in a small area working with a small group, but we do one star at a time, and then we'll keep growing and keep expanding. And then hopefully we can shift the narrative here for our high school student athletes and have them more prepared when they come to you all. Yeah.
Thank you for that. All right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap everything up. And I want to again thank everybody for attending. Thank you for filling out the session evaluation, and thank Mrs. Coleman again for her time and for putting this presentation together. It was very informative.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. You guys all have a great weekend.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.